our next guest coming up here as we begin a new hour on the Free Ross-A-Thon is a man who stands for freedom and liberty, and he shows people how to do it. He's an educator. He's a person that many of us admire for who he is, what he has done, and I'll tell you, it is an honor to have him with us. It is Tom Woods, and he's joining us right now. Tom, thanks so much for being here with us.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody. Can I say one quick, stupid, technical thing at the beginning?
You go right ahead.
I am so mortified that I have such terrible lighting for this. I am such a stickler about this stuff, but I'm building a house, and so I'm temporarily living in a rental house, and I refuse to get moved into or attached to this house. So only the bare minimum is unpacked, so I don't have a proper studio. I've got flashlights here on the side just to get some decent light. I mean, it's hard.
I like it. This is good, Tom. Yes.
I appreciate that. And, you know, and I do have earbuds somewhere, but who knows? These are
a nice touch, a nice fashion statement.
Yeah, these are my serious podcasting headphones I got out here.
We're here for serious broadcasting now. So back to Tom Woods, you're wonderful. You talk about economics. You talk about liberty and freedom. What role does economics have to play with freedom and liberty?
Well, I mean, to me, economics is all over our lives, simply because economics really boils down to choices that we make. You know, what would I rather do A than B? What would I like to do with my life? How would I like to serve my fellow man? I mean, some of these are really questions that get down to the fundamentals of who we are as human beings. Economics is not just about dollars and cents. It really is about the meaning that we find in our lives. How are we going to serve each other? And to me, that's a question that we ought to be able to answer ourselves. And I favor giving people the greatest possible scope to do that. And so in a way, this is a great time to be alive for that very reason, because increasingly we are seeing people able to liberate themselves from the traditional, well-worn paths of go through traditional school for 12 or 13 years, regurgitate their propaganda, then for 4 more years regurgitate even worse propaganda, and then sit by the phone waiting for an opportunity to come through. You don't have to live that way anymore. There are opportunities galore thanks to the internet, and there are opportunities to learn real stuff as opposed to propaganda. So we're actually living through one of the most liberating periods in history. And yet, of course, here we are talking about a very unfortunate case of someone whom we want to liberate and who is, I think, a victim of the fact that this new age that's being born is still very much in the growing pains stage.
Yeah, matter of fact, I want to pick up on top of that and say we see that so much of life really is about economics. Matter of fact, many of us feel that it really is praxeology, I think is the term, a guy you might have heard of somewhere called Ludwig von Mises, who talks about this. And I want to look at the practical economic ideas of being with Ross and supporting Ross. What do you see are the practical reasons why you, Tom Woods, are supporting the freedom of Ross?
Well, I leave the legal aspects to the legal experts, even though it seems to me one hardly needs to be a legal expert to say there's just one outrage after another associated with this case, and no doubt you've been reviewing those today. That alone ought to be enough to make people support reviewing Ross's case and getting him out. Of course, his sentence is vastly disproportionate to any harm he's done because he hasn't done any harm. And to me, well, again, as thinking both in terms of morality and as an economist, well, I would say no harm, no foul. My view is that we ought to be, if what we're concerned about is maximizing people's prosperity and liberty, then I want to make sure that people who defraud people or deprive people of what's rightly theirs, those people ought to be punished. And people who are not doing any such thing, people who are involved in voluntary transactions that are none of anybody else's business, ought to be allowed to live free. I want to see embraced once again the great American tradition and principle of mind your own damn business.
Hear, hear. Yes, indeed. You're getting cheers around the studio on that one, Tom.
I mean, really.
I mean, really. Boils down to that, doesn't it?
Yeah, mind your own business. And It's so funny how we have people who, on one end of our so-called political spectrum, yeah, they agree on 12 things. Mind your own business on 12 things. But the 13th and 14th things, we got to get in there and crack some skulls. And then on the other side, those people want to support people making their own decisions on another 12 things. Yeah, jeez. You know, especially now that I have a growing family, I have 5 children, I have a very busy life. Each one of them, I want to give as much of my attention to as possible. And every family always has challenges every day, and problems we want to solve, and lessons we want to see learned. That is plenty to occupy my time, without worrying about how the rest of the world are living their lives. And so that's, to me, initially when I heard about this, that was my first thought. But then when I heard about what a grotesque miscarriage of justice it was, I thought, how can any person of conscience not be involved in this cause?
Yes, indeed. I think so. There's a lot out there that shows what life is like, and Ross is kind of like a focal point. It's one of the reasons why we wanted to come together on this free Ross-A-Thon. So many areas converging in the same area of digital currency, the justice system, and the idea of freedom and commerce. People being able to work there, and the drug war. Thank you, Lynn. Mm-hmm. And I think all of this is coming together right now. Yeah, privacy, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, it's true. And so many people think, well, why do I need to worry about privacy? I'm not doing anything wrong. Yeah, and this is, first of all, the definition of what's wrong in the eyes of the state and in the eyes of society changes over time. And you could find yourself being what was an ordinary law-abiding citizen 10 years ago. And then suddenly, for example, there are causes that I would not dare donate to, because if they ever got in legal trouble and the judge said you have to turn over your donor list, I wouldn't want to be on it. And because if I were on it, then they would want to look into my taxes or my, audit me or whatever. Now, I keep meticulous taxes for precisely that reason, but I don't want the harassment. So there are all kinds of areas of life where you would be doing nothing that harms anybody. But as I say, I don't want to mention names, but there are causes that recently I thought, maybe I'd like to give a few bucks to that. But I can't be sure that the state won't expose that as a way of damaging me personally. So there are so many ways that your privacy is something that even the average person who's not getting himself in trouble ought to cherish. And then I think another thing that bothers me about all this, frankly, is the apathy on the part of the general public. I mean, the general public has been taught to be outraged at whatever the media-generated outrage of the day is. And it's always somebody said some insensitive thing, and then that person walks through society in sackcloth and ashes doing penance, and we all know there's this ritual that we endure. But here is an actual outrage, and standing outside the courthouse were a handful of people, including Jim Babb here. I mean, what is the problem? So I'm glad that we're living in this time when we are being able to emancipate ourselves from the 3 networks that I grew up with. But there's obviously a lot more work to do because given the outrages of this case, there ought to be vastly more voices on our side. But I'm glad to see the successes that we've had. Don't get me wrong. But for goodness sake, given all the fake outrage people seem to be able to manufacture every day on Facebook, you'd think they could spare a little for Ross.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. I think part of it is the media, mainstream media, the way they portray it. And also, I wanted to address what you said about being afraid to donate, because that's what we have heard sometimes. I don't want to, here's anonymous cash, or, I don't want to be known as donating. And I realized through all this that people fear the government now.
Yeah.
They're afraid.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a eye-opener for me. Not that I love them, and I didn't criticize them, but people are really afraid of them.
Yeah.
And that's when you think about that, it's disturbing, very disturbing.
I think of what Thomas Jefferson said, that when government fears the people, you have liberty. When people fear the government, you have tyranny. Tom, what are your thoughts?
Well, I couldn't agree more. I'm just thinking about somebody I talked to recently, and I can't even tell you the person's name, who said that increasingly when he's raising money, because he's involved in some unpopular causes. But a lot of what we do is unpopular, but it's getting more popular. But, right now we're a little bit edgy for some people. He says increasingly people are just meeting him, sliding an unmarked envelope full of cash across the table and walking away. I mean, it's bizarre. It's like on the one hand, so many vistas of liberty are opening up to us. And on the other, there are aspects of our lives in which we're learning what it must have been like to live, under a totalitarian society.
Yeah,
that's
very
really interesting. That's so true.
Yeah. Well, Tom Woods, you have helped so many people. I love your courses that you have and the podcasts you do and the information. Thank you,
Great
sir,
stuff.
for doing that and for the contributions you're making to freedom and liberty. We greatly appreciate it. And by the way, we love those headsets. They really look good. And the lighting is fine. I like it that you said, hey, we're just going to barrel through. We're going to make it work pragmatically. Let's make it happen. Thank you, sir.
Doggone it. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks
Good
so
luck.
much, Tom.
All right, Tom, before we let you get away, how does people get in touch with you?
Oh, just check out tomwoods.com. I've got 795 episodes of the Tom Woods Show waiting for you there.
Is that all? Only 795?
And another 63 episodes of Contra Krugman with Bob Murphy. That ought to get you started.
That is great. Tom Woods, you're wonderful. We appreciate it, and wishing you the best there as you're getting moved into the new house and all the new things. Lots
Thanks
of
a
good for
million.
you, sir.
Thank you, guys.